This is a video I've got on my Telegram channel that I found last night. This is a kamikaze drone attack in Kiev, Ukraine. I believe it was yesterday. Here we go. You hear the drones at about the 27-second mark, and then you'll see them right before that.
What building is it?
There they are, right up here. Right there.
Туда же. بتكون محطة
Alex, stay with me.
And there's some of the aftermath of that particular attack. So these are going to be employed a lot more across the entire country of Ukraine, according to intel that I'm seeing from Hal Turner and other places. So Kiev has just seen the beginning of this from what I'm understanding. As this new general has taken over, and this type of technology is going to be used because that's what he likes to do. And he has been, I guess, very clear, according to Hal Turner, he's been very clear in a memo to Putin saying that he no longer wishes to waste Russian troops and resources against the terrorist Nazis inside of Ukraine, basically, in this guerrilla type of warfare, but rather he wants to take out Ukraine proper using Russia's technology and superior air power. And as you heard, Ukraine didn't really have an answer for those kamikaze drones that they're using now at this general's direction, by the way. Who is this general? Well, they call him General Armageddon, and the Russian Hawks are celebrating his arrival, and his name is Sergei Surovikin. And he celebrated his 56th birthday, October 11th, and he's the toast of the Russian Hawks. And that was after marking his appointment as commander of the armed forces in Ukraine. And he did that with a barrage of missiles at Ukrainian cities last Monday. And as you heard, the drones are continuing. So a Siberian with a reputation for both brutality and competence, who has long been earmarked for leadership, General Surovikin became the first man to be given overall command of the Russian operation on Saturday, October 8th, shortly after the bombing of the Kerch Bridge. So there's confidence among the most hardline elements of Russia's military establishment that he can help turn around what they consider a floundering military campaign. And his appointment was widely celebrated. One person said that Surovikin is the most competent commander in the Russian army, and that's from Prigozhin. He's the head of the Wagner paramilitary group. They're mercenaries, in other words, on the day of his appointment. Now he has a checkered record of over the course of his career, and I'll let you read that on your own. But he sounds like a General Patton, as far as his hardline stance. He's known for his brutal treatment of his troops at times. Sounds like Patton. So anyway, I'll let you read the rest on your own, but that's who the guy is. At least this is who the West is portraying him to be. But I've seen from Russian sources too, hardline sources, that they are pleased he's taking over. And as you saw, the head of the Wagner group, their mercenary group inside of Russia, is also pleased. He said he's the most competent commander that they have. So those types of attacks I just showed you are going to continue and probably increase, as now Iran is also sending over these Fatah 110 and Zulfiqar missiles to Russia. So I'm going to mute the sound here so I don't get any copyright violations, but you can see for yourselves what they look like in this video. And they're medium-range ballistic missiles. I believe one is 300 kilometers in range, and the other one goes 700, respectively. And they have a huge supply of these things. Huge. Hezbollah also has a big supply. So, and these drones, of course, are very cost effective. And these deals were finalized in September 18th, they're saying, inside of Russia. So these transfers of weapons have been long planned, they say. That's an example of them launching. And these are the types of weapons that are now going to be employed all across the country of Ukraine, not just eastern Ukraine, the Donbass and Luhansk region. All of Ukraine is now in the crosshairs, and according to Hal, they're going to take it all. According to Hal's intel, the objective has now changed from a special military operation to just taking all of Ukraine, because their survival depends on it, they think. Just like I showed you in that video on the community page the other day, which I did not agree with all of it, okay? I didn't agree with all of his assessments, but I did agree with the fact that, hey, if the road gets open to Crimea, if Ukraine is able to do that, then Russia's got to do something desperate at that point. So this is what he's trying to prevent, and he's trying to prevent needless deaths inside, with his troops. And he says, look, we're going to use our air power and our superior technology here. And they're going to pulverize Ukraine, is what he said. In this article, it says crushing Ukraine, as Iran has sent these 2,000-kilometer Fatah 10s, Zulfigars, and Arash 2s. Well, the 2,000-kilometer range is these drones, not the missiles. And they also sent a non-involvement ultimatum to Israel. They say Russia and Iran will leave nothing unturned, and this marks a globalization of the conflict. This coming from War News 24/7 in Greece. So forgive the translations from Google. Sometimes they're not super accurate, or I have to backtrack and try and make it make sense. So Iran's involvement in the Ukraine war is dangerously deepening, as in the context of the new generalized attack prepared by General Surovikin, as he's preparing to send Fatah 110s, Zulfikar ballistic missiles, like I just showed you, as well as the most modern Arash 2 kamikaze drones. All three Iranian weapons will multiply the strike capabilities of the Russian army. It's now clear that the new commander of the Russian forces in Ukraine, General Surovikin, wants to pulverize the Ukrainian armed forces and the infrastructure of Ukraine in order to reduce the risk for the ground forces, just as Hal Turner was reporting over here. So that kind of confirms what his intel is telling him as well. So anyway, it's hard to imagine what will be left of Ukraine that does not have a decent anti-aircraft defense, which we saw in that video, by the way, as you heard, the volleys of AK-47 fire trying to bring down those drones. They don't really have a decent anti-aircraft defense, especially against these things. So now with successive barrages of ballistic missiles, Russian and Iranian, such as the Iskanders, the Fatah 110s, the Zulfigars, combined with cruise missiles, and swarms of kamikaze drones like the Arash 2, the Shahed 136, and Russian Lancets, well, that changes the whole course of the war. The bad thing for Ukraine is that Iran's ballistic missiles, such as the Fatah 110 and Zulfigar, have already been used in Syria and Iraq and have proven their reliability. They are extremely accurate with a range of up to 700 kilometers, 200 more than the Russian Iskander, which is probably why they need them or are asking for them. But the attempt to flatten Ukraine by Russia and Iran sends a very clear message to the West and Israel, and here a serious problem arises for the Jewish state. If Iran has such a large arsenal that enables it to supply Russia in huge quantities like it is, some sources speak of 2,000 to 3,000 drones, by the way, then Israel should review the size of Tehran and Hezbollah's arsenal. Yes, they would do well to do that and not underestimate them, because they have a huge arsenal. They've been building these arsenals for decades, guys, and they've made improvements. In addition to this, Iran's new armed deliveries to Russia will increase U.S. and Western pressure on Israel to get involved militarily against Ukraine, or in Ukraine against Russia, excuse me. Something like this will bring involvement and escalation in Syria and the Middle East as well. I bet it will. It'll have a domino effect. And this without counting the compensation that Iran will get, such as the Su-35 aircraft and the Su-57 from Russia. So undoubtedly, the conflict in Ukraine is globalizing to a dangerous degree. The Arash 2s were created specifically to hit targets in Israel. Therefore, their use in Ukraine is a rehearsal for the Middle East. Yes, they always do this, guys. They always test out their new weapons in different theaters of war. Russia does the same thing, and so does the U.S. An Iranian analyst speaking about the Iran-Russia cooperation emphasized that soon Zelensky will have to learn to speak Farsi, which I found kind of funny. And he said that military cooperation between Iran and Russia is not connected to the war in Ukraine. It just entered a new phase a long time ago. The weapons that Russia bought from Iran are not limited to drones and include the other weapons as well. As I showed you, those missiles, the Fatah 110. So, and we already covered that, so I'll let you read the rest on your own. A new batch of drones, as we just talked about, the Arash 2s are going over there. So all kinds of activities increasing, guys, not only between Russia and Ukraine and Iran, but also now Russia's issuing another ultimatum to Israel. And so that's here on TASS as well. As Dmitry Medvedev said, that Israel might as well recognize Stephen Bandera and this Roman Sukovich as its heroes. Or Shukovich, I guess. Sorry, I mispronounce these names sometimes, but it is what it is. So anyway, he's comparing them to, he says they might as well recognize these Nazis. That's who they are. These nationalist heroes from Ukraine. So, Deputy Chairman of Russia's Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, warned on Monday it would be a mistake for Israel to supply weapons to Ukraine. Israel seems to have decided to supply weapons to the Kiev regime. That would be a very rash decision, for it would damage all of the interstate relations between our countries. That's what he wrote on his Telegram channel. He said Israel might as well recognize Stephen Bandera and this Roman Sukovich as its heroes. Bandera was the leader of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, a Nazi organization, and Shukovich led the Ukrainian insurgent army. Both organizations are outlawed in Russia. So on Sunday, Israeli Minister of Diaspora Affairs, this Nachman Shai, said his country should follow the example of the U.S. and NATO allies and start providing military assistance to Ukraine. And they already have. And we've already shown that in different segments on this channel. But now they're openly saying it, and now Russia is responding to it, giving them an ultimatum, saying that this would destroy relations, and then this would widen the war, guys, to the Middle East, to include Syria, Iran, those countries proper. And then, of course, Israel's going to get hit. Like Hal said in one of his commentaries on this particular subject, Israel sleepwalking into their own Armageddon. And that's what it appears anyway. But believe me, all this stuff has been planned. So we have this also. Surovikin stamped leveling of Ukraine. Soviet MiG-29s have been returned to active service, and Belarus's D team is ready for the invasion. And it shows, the satellite images shows MiG-29s came out of long storage mode. So yes, they're bringing out everything, all the old guns from even the 80s. So Russia's preparing for the final blow to Ukraine. By order of General Surovikin, Soviet MiG-29 fighters were returned to active service from long-term storage. The fighters were deployed to air bases next to the border with Ukraine in areas such as Cerny and Kiev. So this also explains why Westerners recently reported that Russia was looking for pilots. General Surovikin has prepared a plan to level Ukraine by air so that Russia gets the upper hand by next month. The next 2 to 3 weeks will be shock and awe for Ukraine, so there's no room for reaction. The satellite images speak for themselves. The Soviet arsenal will be exhausted over Ukraine. And we're talking about Su-24s, 25s, MiG-29s, Su-34s, along with strategic bombers, cruise missiles, kamikaze drones, ballistic missiles, will strike targets across the country, military, civilian, and anything that moves. In this context, at 2 large air bases, Russia's gathering Soviet MiG-29s, and there's Belarusian forces bearing the D2 symbol. They've taken up combat positions on the border with Ukraine. And the purpose of the new symbol is to distinguish Belarusian from Russian forces in the northern sector. Recruitment is underway and will be completed in a few days. Russian forces are being reinforced in Belarus. China and many other countries, as we already know, are evacuating their embassies in Kiev. Now we have a return of the Soviet MiG-29s to active service. Russia is returning the MiG-29 multi-role fighter jets to active service in a sign of what it is up to in Ukraine. Satellite images show the MiG-29 fighters have come out of long-term storage at Russian air bases. According to the information, the Russian MiG-29 fighters are transferred from the Malerovo and the Kursk air bases. And there's satellite images showing them, and this shows their different capabilities. There's upgraded versions that carry these different upgraded missiles, including air-to-surface missiles, to take out targets on the ground. And so I'll let you look at all these videos for yourselves of Belarus transferring weapons to the front, also Russia transferring weapons to Belarus. Now this D2 team of Belarus is ready to invade Ukraine. The Minister of Internal Affairs of Belarus recently revealed that additional security measures have been taken across the country. in all defense forces and in the border area with Ukraine. So according to the Belarusian Foreign Ministry, Belarus has deployed forces consisting of expanded border detachments, mobile groups from various agencies to protect the border with Ukraine in the context of increased activity of the Ukrainian intelligence services. They say the Ukrainian side is guarded not only by border guards, but also by territorial defense forces. At our borders, both on land and in the water, armed men are approaching without identification marks. They are targeting our border guards. They are shooting in the air. That's according to the State Border Committee of Belarus. So they're trying to provoke them into a war, guys. They're trying to provoke Belarus and expand the war. So you see what a dangerous, dangerous time we're in right now. So employees of the Ministry of Emergencies of Belarus have received weapons from the Ministry of National Defense with the task of maintaining order and the protecting of the country in case of mass unrest or armed conflict. That's from the head of the Ministry of Emergency Situations. He went on to add, there are also more than 5,000 different closed structures in Belarus that can be used to protect the population in case of, among other things, missile attacks. So in other words, they're going to have the air shelters opened up. Signal of engagement, they prevented terrorist attacks. Authorities of Belarus announced that they prevented a series of terrorist attacks with several perpetrators being arrested. Employees of the Central Directorate for Combating Organized Crime and Corruption arrested several people who were preparing terrorist attacks and sabotage in Belarus. And that sounds like traditional Ukrainian SVU tactics, guys. They've been using it in Russia too, as we know, including murdering that Russian journalist, which the U.S. admitted to. I showed you that in don'tspeaknews.com about 10 days ago. So they said that they aimed to plant bombs. Information about where to find incendiary mixtures was obtained from the chatbots, they said. It's clarified that the suspects are giving confessions and cooperating with the investigation. He emphasized the fighters are trained in Poland to gain experience in military operations in Ukraine. So it could be mercenaries as well, guys. It's hard to say anymore. It's hard to say you need a program to keep all these people straight anymore, all these different forces. Here's some satellite images of those MiG-29s that were brought out of mothballs and back into active service. So they're bringing out all the guns, guys, even from the old Soviet Union days. And these conscripts that they're bringing on board, these 300,000, which I think it's more than that. But anyway, the 300,000 that Russia admits to, they're going to be filling up the back lines while the experienced troops and the ready troops are deployed to the front lines in Ukraine and on into NATO as well, because this war is about to expand. As the West is preparing nuclear crisis plans, according to the UK media sources. This is from RT.com. Officials say they're looking at ways to prevent panic and chaos at home in case of a nuclear event. Western governments are drawing up plans to avoid panic among their citizens should a nuclear weapon be used in Ukraine, according to two major UK media outlets. The alleged preparations come, I should say, as NATO officials are feeling speculation about the possibility and issuing repeated warnings that Moscow would face severe consequences if it deployed the bomb. Like I've said many times, once one bomb is deployed, I don't care who deploys it, you're probably going to see a domino effect as everybody's going to start launching. Nobody's going to want to be left out. They're all going to want to use their toys. So the question is, where does it stop? Remember what Jesus said, if he doesn't cut the days short for the elect's sake, days of the tribulation short, if there be no flesh left, there be nothing left to save. And this is just one example of that. And of course, we've got, other things we can talk about, such as the sauce, and we're going to get into that in a different segment, but here on the website, don'tspeaknews.com, of course. But yeah, guys, we're getting close. Israel's getting involved. NATO just started these new drills, which we talked about last week, the Steadfast Noon with 60 aircraft, B-52 bombers, and other missile carriers. And guess what? Russia's nuclear drills just happen to coincide with it. Can you imagine that? So now NATO on Monday launched its regular nuclear deterrence drills in Western Europe. The 30-nation alliance stressed that the routine recurring training activity, which runs until October 30th, so the end of the month, was planned before Moscow invaded Ukraine and is not linked to the current situation, which, my butt, it's not. Anyway, it will involve U.S. B-52 long-range bombers and up to 60 other aircraft in total will take part in training flights over Belgium, United Kingdom, and the North Sea. Well, at least they're not going to fly over Ukraine or Poland right next to them. You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't surprise me. So I'm going to close this out real quick. The nuclear drills, which do not involve live bombs, are taking place amid heightened tensions with Russia and blah, blah, blah. We already know that. Steadfast Noon is likely to coincide with Moscow's own annual nuclear drills dubbed GROM, which normally are conducted in late October, in which Russia tests its nuclear-capable bombers, submarines, and missiles. Sounds like the perfect time for all of this to go wild weasel. The drills that will involve 14 countries and up to 60 aircraft include the most advanced fighter jets on the market and the B-52 long-range bombers that will fly in from Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. Now, the drill takes place every year like Russia's does, but always over different countries and locations. And this time, they're going to be training over Belgium, Great Britain, and the North Sea. And, of course, Russia will be doing their own exercises at about the same time, along with a real war going on inside of Ukraine, of course, which could go wild weasel at any time as well. Now, like I said, with this new general in charge, Russia's taking the gloves off. And, you know, I've already shown you supporting evidence of that. So here it is, guys. Time is short. Are you ready? Wow. Time is short indeed. Oh, one last thing before I forget. I wanted to show you this. This is a HIMARS. As you can see right here, this is a HIMARS missile. Well, you can kind of see it's a little blurry. But this soldier who was in the trenches there in the Donbass caught one of these as it was coming in. And so this is what it's like to be under fire from an American HIMARS missile system. Check it out. Oop.
Вот. Ебать!
I can imagine what that translates to in English. But anyway, yeah, that's what it's like to be under the fire of this HIMARS M30 or M31 ammunition is what they were figuring it probably was. It's not as possible to establish how many blows were inflicted, they say, with the use of such weapons. However, take into account the fact that the American HIMARS are being used more and more actively. The armed forces of Ukraine have a fairly large number of launchers and ammunition for them. So they expect more attacks on the frontline troops with these things, which are now starting to see. So there you go, guys. That's kind of a brief rundown. I know it's not real brief anymore, but there's so much to cover. So much to cover, you know, but we can only cover so much at a time. So there you go. I think that'll do it for now. But please, prayed up and prepped up, guys. I emphasize prayed up first because we're not guaranteed any time in this life. The next step is eternity. So you want to make sure you're going to spend it in the right place. So make Jesus Christ your Lord and Savior today while there's still time. My number one mission through all of this, besides warning you about, you know, things that are on the horizon and things that are happening now, is also to find the lost sheep that are still out there. So if that's you, come home to now and make Jesus Christ your Lord and Savior, either for the first time or once again. If you've backslidden, come on home. Now is the time, because time is very short. But the good news is that all who call upon his name shall be saved. The Bible guarantees that. And you can have a new born-again spiritual life in Jesus Christ. And even during these times, you can have peace that surpasses human understanding. And it's not saying we don't go through stuff, because we do. And now we're in the tribulation. But he'll guide us through it, just like he's guided me through my health problems and all kinds of obstacles in my life. So make him your Lord and Savior today. All right. That is it for now. I'll keep my eyes on all of this as always, but it's not easy, as you guys know. Once again, thank you for all the prayers and well wishes. I sincerely appreciate it because, wow, this last week was quite the battle with my gut health in particular. So I'm going to type out a blog post for that. I may actually start a separate blog about natural health and share with you guys the things that I've done in this, let's see, going on 8-year battle now to get my health back. Believe me, it's a lot easier to keep it than it is to get it back, as a lot of you know. So anyway, I'm going to put up a blog about that maybe later today or tomorrow. So thank you once again for all the prayers and well wishes. I am feeling much better today. But for a few days there, I had my voice was gone too. But we'll get into that in a different segment. All right. That's it for now. I'll keep my eyes on it as always. God bless. Take care. Johnny Storm. Don't speak news.